Alright, hello again. This is Jeff Scott. I've been coming at you with HTML5 and CSS3 courtesy of the Murox HTML5 and CSS3 3rd edition textbook. We're up to Chapter 12, which is a fairly short chapter, on how to add audio and video to your website. Now we're going to look through this, but I do want you to know that one of the reasons, really one of the reasons, that HTML5 even came to be is there are now audio and video elements in here, so there's a much more standardized way of using HTML to actually add audio and video. In the past, you had to come and use third-party software like Flash or Silverlight or something else. And that may not sound like a big thing, but Flash was probably the one used most, and Apple announced years ago they weren't going to be supporting Flash anymore. So what we want to do in this chapter, use the HTML5 audio and video elements to add audio and video to a web page. All right. Use the object and param elements or embed elements along with audio and video to fall back to Flash in older browsers that don't support audio and video elements. Distinguish between media type, media player, and codec. Explain why more than one audio or video type is typically required to run an audio or video file in all browsers. In general terms, describe the coding that's required for adding audio or video to a page. All right. Part of the problem with audio and with video is there's a lot of different formats. If you look on the slide here, and this slide is taken also in your book on page 431, we've got MPEG-4, which is commonly found for .mp4 and .m4v extensions. It's loosely based on Apple's QuickTime media type. All right, you can use it for all sorts of videos. How do I know that? Because when I end up saving my files here on Camtasia, they become MP4 files. There's Flash Video, which was developed by Adobe. It's one of the most common media types during the last 10 to 20 years. There's OGG files, usually found with a .ogg extension. The good news is they're open source. The good news is they're supported by Firefox, Chrome, and Opera. The bad news is, I believe it's IE, that does not support them. Then there's WebM, relatively new file format, currently supported by Chrome, Firefox, Opera, and Adobe. Adobe has recently announced that future releases of Flash will also support WebM. There's ASF, which is the Advanced System Format. That's a Microsoft proprietary media type. Finally, there's AVI, the Audio Video Interleave, commonly found, again, as a Microsoft proprietary type. Not only are there several types for video, there's several types for audio. There's MP3, which is commonly known, as an MP3 file. It's one of the most widely used audio types. There's AAC, which is an acronym for Advanced Audio Coding. It's the format that Apple uses. There's OGG again, open source, open standard. Again, supported by Chrome, Firefox, and Opera. Again, the name missing from there is IE. Finally, there's WMA, which is the Windows Media Audio. All right, and that's typically, I think, used with Windows, the Windows operating system. So a media type is known as a container for several different components, including an encoded video track and metadata. To play a media type, the browser requires a media player. For specific media players, browsers may require plugins. To say that a browser natively supports a media type, it means that the browser doesn't require a special plugin for it. Now, they talk about video codecs here, and we're getting pretty heavy. I mean, when you think about it, what we talked about in here, with this slide, and this slide, this is hardware stuff. But you have to realize that different browsers support different kinds of audio and video. All right? The video codecs, so what does a media player do when it plays a video? It determines the media type that the user is attempting to play. It determines whether or not it has the ability to decode that video and audio stream. If it does, it decodes it and displays it on the screen. And it displays the sound and it sends it to the speaker. So a codec, and here are 3 examples of codecs. It's derived from the term compressor decompressor or coder decoder. It's a software component used to code and decode algorithms used for a media type. A codec compresses the code so it loads faster in a browser and then decompresses it before it's played. There are dozens of codecs for video, but the 3 most common are shown here. The first, H.264, was developed by the MPEG group about 20 to 25 years ago. The second, Theora, is a royalty-free codec which can produce video streams that can embed in virtually any format. Typically, it's thought of in the same realm as OGG type of stuff. And there's VP8, which was originally developed by On2 Technologies, later acquired by Google. It's another open source royalty-free thing. So, those are video codecs. But just like there's video files in video codecs, there's audio files and there's audio codecs. Okay? So the audio codecs, the 5 most common are shown here. When you watch a video or listen to audio in the browser, the player is responsible for interpreting the media type. It's also responsible for decoding the audio so it can direct the sound to the speakers on the device. Audio codecs often have the same name as their media type or a similar name. All right. So there's AAC, which again is one of the most common. FLAC, which is free lossless audio codec. It's free and open source. There's MP3, we've already heard about that one. There's Vorbis, which is typically packaged with OGG type of files. And there's WMA, which again typically is for Windows Media Audio. Audio support in current browsers. All right, notice IE is very limited, especially when you compare them to most every other browser. The most common audio types are OGG, Vorbis, MP3, and AAC. The most common video types are OGG, Theora, MP4, and WebM. Mobile devices like iPhones and Android support H.264 and AAC. Finally, a MIME type describes the contents of a file and can assist browsers in determining what player to use to open the file. All right, so this last table that's right there summarizes the MIME types and the codecs that are associated with them. And again, it's not so much that you have to memorize this. Come on. That would be a little bit ridiculous, in my opinion. But what you do have to be able to do is to be able to put the right thing with the right thing. All right. How to encode media. To encode audio and video files in their necessary formats, you can use one of the many encoders currently available, including the Miro video converter, iTunes, QuickTime, Windows Media Encoder, Adobe Media Encoder, Firefog, MPEG, and Handbrake. The author recommends the Micro Video Converter. It's a free program that lets you convert audio and video from one format to another, as well as encode video for popular media types like OGG. The Micro Video Converter also supports mobile devices like iPhone and Android. When you use the object element that's shown up here, you can control the appearance and the operation of the media player by coding parameter elements. They're standard HTML. If you don't know the MIME type, the file will be opened by the browser's default media player media type. Because different players accept different parameters, you typically specify the parameters for all players you want to provide for. Then if the player doesn't support one of these parameters that you see here, it'll just ignore it. Some browsers require a param element that specifies the URL of the file even if a file is identified in an object element. So again, this stuff is done differently depending on what you're using. Okay, here's an example of an object statement. Notice it's for playing a flash file. It used to be done more like this than it is right now. The embed, you've got the type, which is the MIME type, the source, which is the URL of the file to play, the width and height, which is the width of the file or the media player that's being used. Although the embed element wasn't part of the HTML4 spec, it's now included in the HTML5 spec. Here are some websites, as it says, for information about some of the other attributes. I'll let you take a look at that at your leisure. All right. The table that you see here, or the figure that you see here, shows how to use the HTML5 video and audio elements to add video or audio and audio to web pages. Put as simply as possible, you just add the video and audio elements to a page and code the source the attribute that points to the media files to be played. And there's going to be an example of that in just a minute. So if we look at this, we've got source, which is the URL of the source file to be played. Poster, supported only by the video element, and allows you to kind of have an image that will be shown before the video is played. Preload, which can tell the browser whether to preload any data, and it has attributes, the default of none. Metadata, where it only preloads metadata like dimensions and track lists, or auto, where it preloads everything it can. Autoplay, which starts playing the media as soon as the web page is loaded. Loop, which causes the media to repeat playing when it reaches the end. Muted, which is supported only by the video element, of course, and it causes the video to begin playing with the volume muted. Controls, which displays the default control toolbar underneath the video or audio being played, and width and height, which again specifies the width or height of the media file to be played within the browser. There's also a source and a type. The source is the URL of the file to be played, as we talked about, and the type is the optional MIME type. So there's some examples here. On top, they show you the easiest way to add a video or an audio element to the page. Remember, these elements play the various media types natively within a browser. To play video on any modern browser, all you need is the source attribute. To play video, all you need is the source attribute. All right, but typically you put more stuff in because, again, the more information you can provide to the browser, the easier the time the browser is going to have with whatever it is you want to do. If you decide you want to fall back to Flash for browsers that don't support video and audio elements, you can nest an object element within the video or audio element to play a Flash file. And that's shown in here. This also works for browsers that don't support any of the media types listed within the source elements. So the chapter ends with this example, and again, this is from chapter 12, so it's not going to work on here because it's a PowerPoint slide, but if we come in and take a look at the chapter 12 stuff, Town Hall, and we bring up the index page, and run the index page. All right, notice what we have here.
Hello and welcome to the San Joaquin Valley Town Hall. We have some wonderful guests. Utah is one of the greatest treasure troves of fossils anywhere in the world.
Scientists have struck gold once again.
So they give examples here of where they've embedded just audio and video together. Quite often, you might have, for example, you're creating a website, and in that website, you maybe want to embed a YouTube video. Maybe it's the president of the company talking or something else. So this is used quite a bit. There's the associated HTML. It's on page 451 in the book. And that pretty much is it for the chapter. Okay? So this chapter was designed to just give you an introduction to audio and video. All right. Make sure that you don't overuse audio and or video. Remember, the media files are often large, so when you embed these media files in there, it's going to slow everything down. Also remember that users who can't see or can't hear won't benefit from audio or video. All right. So in the next chapter, we'll go into chapter 13, how to work with fonts and printing. And I will be back with that chapter shortly.